Story 1. I opened a beer in Los Angeles and then woke up in a bush next to the Flamingo Hotel in Las Vegas. I hope drunk me had fun because sober me certainly did not. Story 2. Last day of my first holiday with friends. I drank absinthe shots with a group of girls we had just met and got lost on the strip. I lost my virginity. On my way home, I saw a man get assaulted and hit his head on the concrete. It was serious. He had a deep head wound and there was blood everywhere. I managed to help carry him to the nearest accident and emergency department. I returned to our hotel covered in blood, and our coach was ready to leave for the airport. Fortunately, I made it on time. Story 3. In my second year of university, I went to a cabin in the woods where we all got very drunk on the first night. We decided it would be a great idea to microwave various things. We ended up putting milk, noodles, and a raw chicken in the microwave. It seemed very funny to us until we woke up the next morning feeling almost sick from the smell of our concoction. Story 4. I started in Seattle. We went to Tacoma. Then we went to Olympia. I woke up fully clothed in Centralia at 5 a.m., face down on a bed in a completely empty apartment. I am not sure what day it was. I think I lost a Saturday. It took me an hour of walking around on a cold 5 a.m. morning to find my car, which was about 6 blocks away. Story 5. I convinced myself that I was a Viking and proceeded to haul the hotel's trash bin and other random items back to my room as plunder. I also urinated on someone's door. Story 6. Went for a surf in the morning, then got on the tram that afternoon. Lost one shoe on the train home. When I got home, I went to the bathroom and thought my wetsuit was a seal in the bath. I actually believed it. I was trying to call the aquarium and the zoo. Story 7. So drunk that I left the party early without saying goodbye to anyone. This is called an Irish goodbye. The party was at my place. Story 8. Drank myself into a blackout in the middle of the night. I remember spending hours consciously breathing. I vomited for 3 entire episodes of SpongeBob. My ex was rubbing my back, and I was just switching between giggling at SpongeBob and vomiting. Good times. Story 9. I was given a small shot of champagne for the new year. I do not know if I felt a little dizzy or not after it. I do not drink that much at all. Story 10. Blackout drunk once a week for 15 years. In terms of alcohol consumption in the last few years, either 20 to 22 beers, 6 beers and 3/4 of a bottle of scotch, or a full bottle of scotch and about half a bottle of rum. Story 11. Got drunk with my friends one night, blacked out. Next thing I know, I wake up with a cat on my chest that I did not own. Keep in mind, we got drunk at my place and we were still at my place. No, I did not keep the cat. They had a microchip and I eventually found their owner. Story 12. Apparently, I tried to enter our taxi home through the closed passenger side window. I am amazed they let me in. Story 13. I have been drunk 2 times in my life. The worst was when I was 16. I got very drunk at a party at a friend's house. My friends decided they needed to get me out of there but couldn't bring me home. One other friend didn't have parents at home for the night, so we relocated there. A few friends called their parents and stayed with me. The plan was to have me call my parents early in the morning because they wouldn't notice me being gone before that, and then ask another friend's older sibling to drive me home in the early morning hours. A group of about 6 friends organized this, and it somehow worked. By the way, this happened in Germany, where the legal drinking age is 16 and the legal driving age is 18. Story 14. Aside from the obvious, I don't remember. There was a weekend when I was tending bar and my boss wanted me to get rid of a few cans of pineapple juice. So I started making tall, strong servings of Caribou for myself and the kitchen. The drink is 4 counts of 151 proof rum, 4 counts of Malibu rum, and 8 ounces of pineapple juice shaken over ice. It goes down smooth but packs a strong punch. Our head cook, Jason, did much the same as I helped him to his apartment across the street. He fell hard on the limestone, crying and telling me to help him up so he could kick my ass. It was not a good weekend, and I still hate rum 2 decades later. Story 15. December 31st, 2008 to January 1st, 2009, New Orleans. If it was not the best, it was very close. I had signed my divorce papers before heading down for a work trip. I had been there a few days, and January 1st had very little work, if any. I went to an open bar event and then out on the town. I do not think I was a problem for anyone until I went back to the hotel. There were a couple of high school marching bands staying in our hotel. I got off on the wrong floor and remembered only the last 2 digits of my room number, not the first. When I went to what I thought was my room, there was a piece of duct tape from the door to the door frame. I thought, "What is this?" and tore it down. I tried the key a couple of times, but it did not work. I decided this probably was not my room. I tried the next floor and tore tape down there too. Finally, I got to my room. The next morning, after talking to my coworkers, I realized that the tape was placed by the chaperones to tell if the kids were leaving their rooms after lights out. Sorry to those who got in trouble. Story 16. It was in Vietnam in 2018. I was tagging along with an Australian fellow. I don't even remember where it was, but we started drinking while watching a movie. He snuck in a bottle of vodka. I vaguely remember going bowling and then going to a nightclub where the music was obnoxiously loud. Next thing I remember, we were back in the hostel and, for some reason, I was using the shower as a toilet. I still feel bad about that, although the night was epic altogether. Shout out to Jordan from Perth. Story 17. Woke up in a different state, about an hour's drive away. Don't worry, my car was there, which means I drove. I was a degenerate in my early 20s. Not even sure that was the drunkest I have been. Just one time that sticks out. Story 18. I was so drunk I sent my landlord $500 with the caption, "For emotional damages." He thanked me the next day. Story 19. So drunk I stumbled into a kebab shop, spent some time perusing the menu on the back wall, and placed my order. It actually occurred to me that I could not understand what I was saying as I was saying it. However, the staff behind the counter clearly understood, as I left with a large kebab and a huge cheeseburger. I only know what the order was from an analysis of the remains I found in the kitchen the next afternoon. No idea what I paid. Story 20. Woke up in accident and emergency at 3 a.m. getting the back of my head stitched with 10 stitches. I had an 8-hour blank spot. Some kind person had found me head to foot in blood, falling over repeatedly in Little's car park, which was about 3 miles from my house. My wrists were hurting, and a few days later I found out I had broken one of them. Multiple triple aftershocks will do that to you. I stopped drinking the next day and have not touched a drop in over 15 years. Story 21. When the trains went on strike, I slept over at a friend's place so I could attend lectures the next day while we were at university. Of course, we went out that evening and started with drinking beer. Then we bumped into another friend with wealthy parents who decided to buy us shots. We ended up in a well-known bar that serves a drink they call a gas chamber. I remember drinking the first one, but it seems that was not the last. We did get back to his place safe and sound, but we have no recollection of the end of the night. I woke up in his guest room, sleeping under his curtains that I had pulled from the window. It seems I also vomited all over the curtains, which indicated we had some sort of late-night kebab as there were tons of green vegetables in it. One of us urinated down his stairs, probably me, as I did not know where his toilet was. There was also a large rock in the middle of his yard that none of us knew how we found. Nothing too big, but big enough to wonder how we found it in the city. Safe to say, I was late for class and did not attend a full day of lectures as I was exhausted. Story 22. When I was in college, I was friends with the guys on the rodeo team, and my good buddy from Mexico decided to bring some liquor from his hometown. I didn't know what it was and didn't even care. It was free liquor and I was in college, so I drank it. Anyway, this went down smooth, no burning, no harsh alcohol taste, nothing. I drank this like water for 2 or 3 hours and didn't feel the slightest bit of buzz. While telling a joke, I dropped my phone on the ground and went to pick it up. When I straightened back up, I was completely gone. I don't even remember how I got home, but my friends told me that my buddy from Mexico drove me home and walked me inside my house. Apparently, my dad had to tell him where my room was, and then they had a conversation in Spanish about the area of Mexico my buddy was from. It was around 3 a.m. Story 23. I was drinking 2 bottles of Jägermeister at Gamescom in Germany for a fun YouTube video where I had to drink a shot of Jägermeister for every girl with blue hair that we saw. I know it sounds stupid. Feel free to tell me. I recorded 12 outros because I always forgot that I had made one. I ended up passing out for 7 hours until I finally woke up in a hospital. Story 24. The morning after, my friends told me I kept bringing them boiled eggs and food at a party. I have no recollection of where I got them from or what happened. Story 25. Put back a 750 milliliter bottle of Jägermeister in roughly 2 hours. Felt so good. But then I went past the tipping point and I threw it all up and had to be driven home. I was very embarrassed as I never get sick when I drink. I had worked late, was arriving at a party late, and was trying to catch up. Story 26. I was 16 at the time, just allowed to drink alcohol. I had this great theory about not eating too much so I would have plenty of space for beer. This did not work out. This was during a school party. I actually told one of the teachers she was attractive and said the same to the prettiest girl at the school. Story 27. Woke up in Germany at 11 in the morning. I somehow had traveled 200 kilometers and I still do not know how, but I guess I took the train to the border and hitched a ride. Story 28. I was out with my sister and some friends and had too many cocktails. All I remember is sitting down and waking up the next day in a bed and breakfast I did not know. The good news is nothing happened to me because she took care of me. Story 29. I was so drunk one time I fell out of the car from the back seat. Friends left me on the lawn because the doors to my house were locked and I did not have a key with me. Story 30. Played a drinking game with a friend. Ended up downing 3/4 of a liter bottle of Jim Beam. The last thing I remember was turning towards a webcam, flipping it off and saying, "Future me, forget you." The next day, I woke up stunned that I hadn't vomited. It turned out I was about to do a lot more. The next 12 hours were hell. If you've ever seen the aftermath of the person who drank the Pepsi Crystal from 1995, it was like that every 5 to 20 minutes. I'm pretty sure I should have died. Or maybe I did. That would explain a whole lot. Story 31. Went to a pub, woke up in a shipbreaking yard on a dock peninsula, where the only way in was over a 20-foot fence. My girlfriend FaceTimed me during my adventure and told me all she could see was giant heaps of metal and water. It could have ended much worse than wasting police time and the walk of shame home. To this day, I still do not know how I got into that place. I have considered aliens and crazed kidnappers. The reality is probably more boring. Maybe I turn into Spider-Man when blackout drunk. Story 32. Blacked out at a Friendsgiving and woke up at my apartment over 300 miles away. My husband had driven us home. He said I was insistent on trying to walk on the highway too. Sigh. Story 33. 1 minute I was making out with a friend at a mutual friend's wedding. The next, I was on a hospital bed connected to various tubes, with a few friends holding me down and a nurse whom I had known for a decade. Not my finest moment, but it was an amazing wedding until I collapsed. Story 34. The professional military education course ended Friday night with the class. I had several Long Island iced teas, never blacked out but spent the next day in the shower recovering. Occasionally, you have to make bad decisions to remind yourself not to make bad decisions. Story 35. The room started to spin when I closed my eyes, so I took a shower. I passed out in the shower on the floor for 3 hours. Story 36. At an underground strip club in New York, 1 minute I was getting a lap dance, and the next I woke up alone in the office with a note taped to my chest saying, "I have your wallet. There is $100 in your back pocket." I walked around confused and then went home. Apparently, I blacked out, and the girl said I owed her $1,000 worth of dances. Thank God I knew the owner. Story 37. I went to a college house party at my ex's apartment shortly after our breakup, where our friend circle was finally invited. Her college friends got to meet us. Her new boyfriend, whom she started dating after only a week, was there. I brought my cousin along for emotional support in case she brought him. Somewhere along the way, I got drunk to the point where I said some pretty hurtful things to everyone before blacking out on the floor. I woke up about 30 minutes later to my cousin threatening my friends with his work knife for some reason. Apparently, he was also drunk, and he did not like the things they were saying about me while I was passed out. I had to crawl on the floor to him since I could not stand up. I told him that we had to leave. He carried me over his shoulders and took me right out of there after seeing my state. Anyway, my friends are not my friends anymore after I found out they let me get driven home by someone who was also drunk. Story 38. Friends Bucks Night. As a pre-wedding gift, a few of us were put on the guest list for a film premiere afterparty with an open bar. The last thing I remember is 5 shots lined up in front of me. Next, I found myself in my friend's car making a stop because we had to bail out the best man from lockup. I was still hungover about 3 days later. Then I started getting texts asking, "What were you and Heath Ledger talking about?" Apparently, we had a very involved discussion. Story 39. Pub crawl in Barcelona. I remember the beginning, parts of the middle, and then the sun rising at the end. I had the worst hangover of my life the next day. Story 40. I was handed a shot of tequila, which I couldn't see clearly as my eyesight had become blurry. It was half salt and half tequila, and I drank it all without even noticing. Story 41. Christmas Eve. I completely missed Christmas. I was 18 and inexperienced, tried to outdrink my alcoholic brother. I went to the bathroom and passed out on the toilet, then fell onto the ground. In the morning, my mother had to force the door open, pull my pants up, carry me upstairs, and put me into bed. I do not remember any of it. I slept the entire day. Story 42. One time my friends locked me in a room because I was too drunk after they made sure I was asleep. About half an hour later, they went to check on me, but the bed was empty. It turns out I jumped out the window, and they found me an hour later in the backyard, just singing on a swing or something like that. Story 43. I had 13 shots of tequila once, back to back. It is the only time I ever had a hangover the next day and threw up. Story 44. Hit my head on a rock after being fed Fireball all night at a friend's 18th birthday. Dad filmed me while hosing down my head with cold water. Story 45. I got drunk alone in my room, and unknowingly, it was so much that all I remember was vomiting on the floor, not having the strength to get up, and falling asleep with my face in it. I woke up and vomited again. 3 hours later, I vomited in the sink. 10 minutes before my father came to pick me up for Christmas. That was so dumb that I am never drinking that much or alone again. That showed me the stupidity of myself. I also once got drunk and confessed my love to a friend with her boyfriend next to her. Yes. Story 46. I still do not remember a single thing from that day. It was the homecoming football game. I stayed until halftime according to what I was told. The time from 12 p.m. to around 7 p.m. is completely erased from my memory, probably for the best. Story 47. I don't know if it is the drunkest I have ever been, but I woke up in the laundry room using the rug as a blanket. Story 48. I do not remember. There is a blank, then a headache and much vomiting. Apparently, I am a well-behaved blackout drunk, though, so there is that. Story 49. I was very drunk and celebrated the New Year twice in a row with everyone around me. It was my first and last time. Story 50. Left a club to get more cash. Tried to read the name over the door to find it again. Couldn't focus. Tried covering one eye. No success. Tried covering the other eye. Still no. Without telling my friend inside the club, I shrugged and went to get a taxi home instead. Stopped off at the city center McDonald's for a meal before my taxi. Standing swaying gently at the urinal, I had to focus hard to relax the right part for urination. I relaxed the wrong part and soiled myself. I quickly moved into an empty stall and stripped off to dispose of my ruined underwear. Next, I came to on my living room floor with carpet print on my face. I wobbled upstairs for a very hot shower. I tried to remove my trousers with confident energy. Then I realized I had not wiped it all back in McDonald's when putting my trousers back on, and my trousers had stuck to my skin as the mess dried overnight on my living room floor. I cleaned myself quickly, making an unmanly noise I have never made before. I then decided it was time to calm things down a few notches. Story 51. I was gifted a Sprite bottle filled with moonshine. After my friend and I finished it, about 2 hours later, I couldn't look forward, not even with one eye closed. I had to walk home by looking down and navigating by the ground. I couldn't lie down either. The world was just spinning, and so was my mind with my eyes closed. It was terrible. Story 52. I don't remember the drunkest I have ever been, but I remember the last time I got drunk. Back in 2010, I was at a reunion gathering with college friends. It was at a bar managed by one of our classmates, and he provided some free drinks as long as we bought food and tipped the staff, which we did. I started drinking shots of Jameson's and had one too many. The next morning, I could not get out of bed. My body was sore, and my head was throbbing. I made my way to the store and got some Gatorade, bread, and ingredients to make a sandwich. It took all day to recover. I remember thinking like Danny Glover's character in Lethal Weapon, I'm too old for this. I have not been drunk since. Story 53. At university, we had a club pub crawl to welcome new members. I had a friend at the bar create a cocktail that was in a small barrel I was carrying around. The problem was everyone I offered it to would say, I will if you will, which I did. The person who made it later told me he thought I had about the equivalent of 7 pints in an hour on top of what I was drinking. Everything after that is missing, but I woke up extremely hungover in a cell with a police officer offering tea and toast. They told me I had apparently stopped to urinate in a corner, which wasn't actually a corner and was very public. They had tried to get my attention, and I turned around to see what someone wanted but forgot I still had my genitals exposed and was urinating. They were quite understanding, considering the situation. Back then, you got arrested to get you off the street, dumped in the drunk tank, given a lecture the next morning, and the sergeant told you to leave. Good times. Story 54. Coming up to Christmas, I had a bottle of Little Whiskey and drank it on my own while doing the housework. A few friends of mine were in a pub watching a match. I don't watch or play sports, so it did not interest me, but I had already drunk a full large bottle of whiskey and was up for some mischief, as we say. Long story short, my friends bought me even more whiskey and worse, mixing whiskey. Apparently, I had a large glass at one stage with Wild Turkey, Bushmills, Jameson, Jack Daniels, and so on. It ended with an ambulance being called for me. I was walking across the road and collapsed without warning, completely unresponsive. The next day, I remember waking up with my heart still pounding out of my chest. It was a scary pounding. Later that evening, having to go to the shop, I still couldn't walk in a straight line. Story 55. College party, freshman year. There was a bottle of Everclear being passed around, and the last person had to chug longer than the previous. Story 56. Decided to get a hotel room with some friends for spring break. Had the bright idea of bringing high-proof corn liqueur. Once I realized I was close to passing out in public, I tried to go back to the hotel room to sleep. I only went to the wrong room on the wrong floor in the hotel next to ours. I am glad no one answered the door I was banging on for so long. Story 57. One day, I got so drunk that my friends had to drive me home because I obviously could not drive, and they would never let me do it either. The following day, they told me that when they got to my house that night, I refused to go in because I claimed it was not my house. 5 people could not get me out of the car to go inside. I do not remember any of it. Story 58. I once woke up with a Boris bike in my bedroom instead of a woman after a night out. I couldn't for the life of me remember why I had it. 2 days later, I went to my local 24-hour Asda supermarket, and the security guard I always say hello to stopped me and said I was barred. Apparently, I entered the supermarket at 2 a.m. on the Boris bike, cycled around, grabbed a large bottle of beer, and cycled out of the store while being chased by the night security guards. I really didn't remember any of this and said it couldn't have been me. They took me into the security office and showed me the CCTV footage. They said they all had a right laugh at it in the morning and didn't tell the police because they said I'm usually a really nice guy when I come in. Story 59. Once I texted my mom that I was coming over to be with my partner instead of my other relationship. I am a 39-year-old gay male, so it was not horrible, but it was a good laugh nonetheless. Story 60. I used to live in Poland in Warsaw. The train assistant woke me up the next morning. I was in Gdansk. Story 61. I met friends at a dive bar in Newport Beach. We will leave the name of the place anonymous. This was over 35 years ago now. The locals will know. I was pretty intoxicated upon arrival. I think it was 8 p.m. when I arrived. I woke up in a hotel room the next day. At noon, I was at Circus in Las Vegas, Nevada. It is a 4 or 5 hour drive from Orange County. I was still very intoxicated. I wandered around the parking structure looking for my car for an hour but never found it. I went to the front desk and asked them to call the police for a stolen car report. A young lady at the front desk told me I came in on the bus from the airport. I found the plane ticket on the dresser in my room. I do not drink anymore. I stopped a few years after that incident. Side note, I did that more than once. Story 62. Intoxicated to the extent of not remembering several hours and the activities that occurred during that period. Story 63. I took a bottle of spirits to a house party. I went with 2 friends who each brought their own bottle. A person showed up with acid, but only enough for everyone except me. I did not want to be the only person not on acid, so I decided to leave. One of my friends felt bad and gave me his bottle of whiskey. I was already very drunk. I walked down the street drinking from the bottle. I was too drunk to taste it anymore. I had to catch 2 trams to get home. I remember vomiting into the Yarra River after the first tram ride and recovering my bottle of alcohol, or what was left. I was woken up at the end of the line on the next tram ride by the tram driver, which happened to be my stop. I do not remember getting home, but I woke up lying face down on the floor, as if I had fallen into my front doorway as it opened. The bottle was empty, and a family-sized bag of Cheetos had been crushed under my weight when I fell, scattering snacks all over the living room. I lived in a unit, and several people likely saw this but chose not to intervene. Story 64. I ruined the whole party by hitting a dab too hard and projectile vomiting everywhere. I ruined the host's bed and embarrassed a boy I was trying to date, all while being 15 years old. The girls had to put me in the tub and hose me down. Story 65. I ended up in the hospital. They performed a blood test and found that my blood alcohol concentration was 6 times the legal limit for driving, which here is 0.05. My blood alcohol level was approximately 0.30. I enrolled in rehabilitation shortly after this. Story 66. Wish I could tell you. Blackout drunk was the norm for me. One night out, as I've been told by my friends, I was blackout drunk. I spent most of the night over a toilet in the club projectile vomiting. My friend kindly decided that he needed to take me home. He turned his back for a second to grab my other friend. I disappeared. I woke up 6 hours later in my dorm bed, fully clothed, to about 40 missed calls. God knows how I got home that night. By taxi. No way were they taking my vomiting body back. In an ambulance? In a police car? Or did I drunkenly walk the 5 miles back to my university campus? Story 67. I must have been about 15 years old. For context, the legal age for purchasing alcohol in the United Kingdom is 18. It was my first experience ever with vodka, the real cheap kind, like own-brand paint stripper vodka. I thought, as they do in the movies, you go shot for shot with vodka since you needed quite a lot to feel the effects. My party started at 6 p.m. By 9 p.m., I was vomiting whole, undigested purple pasta. I had also had a can of dark fruit cider before the shots. The room was spinning and I blacked out. The next day, I physically couldn't move without my body retching. It got to the point where I had to drink water just to vomit, as my body needed something to throw up. Overall, a 9 out of 10 decent party. Story 68. First time I went to Benidorm. When I woke up, our terrible hotel room was like the room from The Hangover, minus the tiger. I still have no idea how I got from the bar we were in to the hotel room. Story 69. When I was at Fort Benning, we had a party at someone's house. I decided it would be a good idea to drink an entire bottle of Cuervo. I vomited in their house and in their yard. I apparently fell out of our car 3 times on the way home, though I do not remember that part. I woke up with a blanket and pillow on the bathroom floor. Story 70. I was drinking apple juice in a wine glass and decided to drive under the influence in Mario Kart. Not to mention, I do not even have a license, so I am doing more illegal things. Story 71. My team was in the championship game and won. I started drinking at 8 a.m. Saturday and ended up home at 6 a.m. Monday. Story 72. At my last bar, on my last day, my coworker and I, both bartenders, split a bottle of Casamigos during that shift. I was very intoxicated. I have been sober for 3.5 years now. Story 73. At the work Christmas party, I aggressively tried to flirt with my manager. We were both, at the time as far as we knew, heterosexual males. When that didn't work, I tried to chat up the war memorial, which didn't even look like a person, it was a cross. I moved to a different bar with 2 older women who kept feeding me more alcohol. After that, I have vague memories of eating a kebab off the floor of an alley, wandering through a stream, and then being shuttled into a taxi with my jeans completely in tatters. Story 74. My first time drinking, I nearly drank an entire bottle of gin. I blacked out and fell down the stairs. I was left alone for the night in a house that wasn't mine. I just remember vomiting for hours. In 2016, Cape Cod, I took 18 shots of Fireball within an hour and a half. I blacked out, smashed my face on concrete, and broke my brand new glasses. I don't remember anything from that night except 2 brief moments. Being picked up and vomiting. I was still drunk when I woke up. I was in my underwear, walking around looking for my glasses. I was so hungover that I went to the beach to rest and get away from the noise at our camp. I fell asleep and got sun poisoning. It was an awful vacation, entirely self-inflicted. Story 75. Last thing I remember, I was at my friend's house with a few others, and we were opening a bottle of Jack Daniels after finishing one. Next, I woke up in an old Honda Civic I had never seen before, in a neighborhood I did not recognize several towns away. I did not have my phone, glasses, jacket, or hat. For police officers were surrounding the car, laughing at me, and a man in a white t-shirt, who turned out to be the owner of the car, was not pleased. Story 76. I once urinated in the compact disc tray of my stereo. I must have woken up, pressed eject, urinated on it, then closed it. Story 77. Freshman year in college, 4 or 5 of us would pass a half-gallon of Sailor Jerry's around the circle in our dorm to start the night. Then when we went out to party, we each had our own fifth. It was a jungle party, so I wore no shirt and a leafy toga skirt. This was in Bozeman, Montana, in December. Apparently, the cold did not faze me. I do not remember any of this, but on the way to the party, I ran across a crosswalk, tripped halfway, and slammed my head on the street. I got to the party and somehow got in a fight with a guy there. I threw him through the drywall, making a 5-foot wide hole. He punched me in the front tooth, which was an implant, and knocked it out. I came to the next day with my friends and some of their parents at Mr. Pickle's sandwich shop, trying to eat a sub with a missing tooth that hurt badly. Just one of many crazy nights freshman year at Montana State University. Story 78. I woke up in jail. Luckily, I only reached the point where I turned the key. Police officers watched me walk to my car, get in, and waited for me to start the engine before arresting me. Cannot blame them. I do not drink anymore. Story 79. The most intoxicated I have ever been was when I was unconscious in the bathroom. I was fortunate not to choke on my own vomit. Probably should have been a situation requiring a stomach pump, but I survived. Story 80. Going shot for shot with my friend and a bottle of Bacardi 151. He eventually peed his pants, and it was the only time I have passed out. Story 81. I really cannot drink because 1, it is gross, and 2, I get tired. The one time I got blackout drunk, I woke up in my bed. I tucked myself in. Priorities. Story 82. About a month ago, I drank too much while with my partner, needed support to walk, and fell asleep the moment I hit the bed. Good times. Story 83. Out drinking with friends. It had been snowing, so I helped a man push his van out of the snow. He then asked for a lift to the next pub. 2 friends jumped in the front while my friend and I got in the back of the van. I only realized that the man had a bottle of vodka on the dashboard once we got out. Maybe not the drunkest I have been, but probably one of the most dangerous situations I have put myself in while drunk. Sorry, Mom. Story 84. When I was about 15, my dad and I were at a friend's place for a barbecue and some pool. My dad chuckled into his beer as I polished off a 5-liter cask of Fruity Lexia. About half an hour after finishing it, I went outside and was violently ill, vomiting the entire contents of my stomach in the paddock. The next morning, I had a horrendous hangover. I learned a valuable lesson. Ever since then, I have not once drunk any kind of wine. Binge drinking harms you, so as a result, when I do drink, I automatically stop when I get mildly tipsy. Story 85. When I was 14, I was trying to commit die, so I drank 2 bottles of vodka, 1 bottle of wine, and a gallon of vodka. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.